Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first in a series of legal lunchtime talks. SB Legal has brainstormed a few topics that we thought our fellow colleagues here at SB might find interesting, and we're going to start with criminal law and criminal procedure. Okay, so, have you ever wondered what your rights are? Say, you stop your expensive Ferrari in the middle of the road, you get into a fight with someone behind you, and then you get arrested. Now, then you think to yourself, that wasn't such a great idea. What do you do? So today we have Jonathan Wong. He's a partner in Tito, Isaac & Co. to tell us more about this. Just a bit about Jonathan. His practice includes dealing with both contentious and non-contentious matters. In civil law and criminal law, he was also a former prosecutor with the Attorney General's Chambers and Ministry of Manpower. So he's got a vast experience in criminal cases. So without further ado, let's welcome Jonathan.
Thank you very much. I'm going to try to keep this as fluid and flexible as possible, so don't feel that you need to save your questions to the end. I'm sure all your friends will be very happy if you can shout out your question as we go along. I'm quite happy to answer that. Just to expand a little bit on Don's introduction, I've been in the legal industry for about 15 years. The last 7 or close to 8 have been in this particular firm where I do a great deal of work that involves going to court. I call that litigation. And within this litigation that I do also a lot that involves criminal defense work. And that would mean that I have to defend people who have been accused of doing something wrong or they've been formally charged in court. And my role is to not try to get them out of trouble, so to speak, but it's trying to make sure that they are properly advised and they have their rights properly exercised. And that really is my theme for today. I'm not sure whether that's a theme for legal series, but it's not to teach you or to educate you. It's just really to inform you. And that's, I think if you Google my name, you'll find some other personal pet projects that I get involved in terms of trying to spread information about legal subject matters. My passion or my motivation for doing something like this and my own day job is really to inform a lot more people about just their rights and to let people know that it's not only criminals who need to find a lawyer. You don't only need to speak to a lawyer only when you get in trouble, and these are things that you really should know just as much as self-medicating a headache or a nosebleed or a stomachache or it's sometimes very frightening, and I just want to start off by giving you this thought so that you can carry it with you through the talk. It's not always a very comfortable situation to be in when you don't know what your legal rights are, right? But you know a lot more about your other rights. You know where to buy insurance, you know how to buy, sell a car or a house, you know how to send your children to school, how to pick certain things that you want to purchase. And also in terms of very meaty, important, significant subject matters such as your health. You don't always need to go to a GP in your estate, or near work if you need to medicate yourself. Very often you'll have a very basic understanding of what you need to do. And why I do something like this is that, at least my own perception and from my own observation, is that I think not enough of us know what our legal rights are, or what to do, as Don has said, when your car is stopped, or somebody bumps into your car and you're accused of doing something wrong, or you run a red light, or you've been asked to attend court because you haven't paid a fine that's overdue, right? Or someone who's close to you or you care about is involved in the case or has been wrongly accused. These things can very often happen, and I know we sit here and we think this is what happens in the newspaper when you read, oh, this person has been in court, oh, this person, oh, he deserves it, But from my perspective in the world that I operate in, it's not exactly that, because it could happen to anyone. And I think that's something I wanted to stress. It really could happen to anyone. If you're a man, you're on a crowded MRT train and the train jerks, you bump into someone, suddenly you've been accused of touching someone inappropriately. And the next thing you know, you've been escorted by the station, staff and the manager to somewhere else, and you don't know what to do. You don't know what to do. The first thing you do is to say, I want to speak to my lawyer, or I try to call my mom and dad, or my husband, or my wife, or somebody. But that couldn't be further from the truth, because in Singapore at least, it's very different. To put it very, very simply, it's very different to what we perceive to be the case in the world that's been portrayed on TV and in film. So just put that in the back of your mind and as you go along, and try to see how this type of information could be something that you may need, or you may need to share to other people who are close to you or who you care about, in your daily life. So without further ado, I'm going to begin. So these are some of the topics I'm going to cover today. Fairly basic, I feel, things that anyone and everyone should know about. Okay, and I'll expand on them as I go along. To see whether we can. Yep. Excuse me. Okay. Oop. Is there a way to? Right. Excuse me, 1 second. Just gotta click it out. No, don't worry about it. So, the first question we're talking about is what happens during an arrest and who can conduct an arrest. So many people think only the police in uniforms and the police posts, they can do that. In short, just about every ministry and statutory board, including STB, probably has an enforcement or investigation branch or team. So these people very often will have rights to speak to you or to invest you. So it's not quite so simple as saying every other ministry or staff definitely has the rights to arrest someone. But just think of it this way, it's not only the people in the blue uniforms. It could be ICA, it could be MOM, it could be the CPIB investigating corruption offences, or any other enforcement or investigation agency. So that's the point I'm trying to cover in the first half of this slide. The next really is when can you be arrested, as the slide will show you, with or without a court-issued warrant. So again, don't get the idea that you only can be arrested when something wrong has been very clearly made out, or when there's a court warrant that they need to produce to arrest you. Very often, as long as they have a reasonable suspicion that you have committed an arrestable offence, that is enough. So whether it's shoplifting, or molest, or cheating, or causing hurt, or fighting, or even arguing with someone in public, very often that may be enough for the enforcement agency officers to come and speak to you and arrest you. So that's the first thing. Non-arrestable offences are minor offences or less serious offences. Okay, and the thing to note about them is that these are slightly different because they're less serious. You can't just go up to someone and arrest them for that. So this needs a court-issued warrant before the enforcement agency officers can arrest you. And as 1, 2, 3 on the slide will show you cannot be subjected to more restraint than is necessary, meaning they can't use more force than is necessary just to detain you, right? And they are allowed to search you during the point of arrest. And if you are a woman, only a female officer can conduct the search. And certain things that you should take note of during the arrest are that they can ask you for your name and your personal particulars, but likewise, and this is the point I'm trying to make for this slide at least, it's also your right and your entitlement to ask them for their name and their reason. So don't feel that somebody in blue uniform shows you the warrant card, arrests you, you can't say anything. You can ask, why am I being arrested? You can, what is your name? What is your rank? Where am I going to be taken? You have a right to ask as many questions as you want. Okay, so that's part of the theme of trying to empower you with this information, so that you don't feel so hamstrung, you don't feel so ignorant or held back by your lack of understanding. When can you be arrested? This is something that I covered earlier on. I'm just going to jump to the next slide. How long can you be detained? This is a very common question that I get asked on a day-to-day basis. if I get arrested or if I'm interviewed or if I've been asked to go and assist with the police investigations, will I come out tomorrow morning or a week? I heard that they can keep me there for 2 weeks or 3 months. The truth is, legally, they can keep you within their premises for 2 days, 48 hours, before they need to ask for permission, right? And the reason is this: 48 hours is what the law or what the people who make the law feel is enough for a very basic but sufficient amount of lead time for them to gather information about the case, okay? But it's also important to know that what happens during this 48 hours is that you probably will have very little access to your family members or to your lawyer. And that's something I'll expand on in the next few slides. Okay? So this could be the single most common question that I get asked, or I try to answer without people asking, which is, do not ever feel or believe that you will have a chance to speak to your lawyer before your arrest, or rather before your interview, or at the point of your interview, or to be able to stop the interview and have him sit next to you, as you see on TV or in the movies. It simply doesn't happen in Singapore. So, quite apart from why that is the case, that's a conversation for another day. But the point to make and to take note of is that that's our rule in Singapore. So if you have been arrested, if you've been asked to go to a police station to give an interview, you can't say, please hold on, please, wait, let me call my lawyer first. Or I want to speak to my solicitor, as they say in the UK or somewhere else. Right? Or you can't even say, let me call my mom first if you are already an adult. I want to let that sink in for a while because this kickstarts a process that if you don't understand this, it will push your interaction with the investigators a certain way. Imagine this, right? If you are confident of going to the police only because you thought, don't worry, I can call my lawyer, right? My mom so and so knows a lawyer, I can call them. Only to be told that, you know what, this person is not going, the investigator speaking with you, he's not going to allow you. He's not going to allow you to speak to this person first, not even for 1 minute, to WhatsApp him, right, or to send a message. You're not going to have the opportunity. And what that happens is, even for very, very regular people, very normal people, so to speak, who have done nothing wrong, immediately it puts you on the back foot because you think, oh, I'm in trouble. I wanted to check this. I don't know whether I can do this. Oh, I don't know whether I can say this. Do I need to give my IC or you know, can I ask to go to the toilet? Would I get lunch? Or what if I can't miss? What if I can't go to work tomorrow? You know, all these things, which are very basic things, have a knock-on effect from the very first misconception for many people, which is, oh, don't worry, I'll be able to call someone. Sadly, you won't. And that's nothing good or bad about it. It's the state of our system for now. Okay, so that's something that you should bear in mind. During the investigations, the police will interview you and ask that you provide a signed statement. And that is something that I'll cover in the next few slides. But I think you get the theme that I'm trying to drive home. When you are detained, eventually you will be released if they do not need you to assist with the investigations anymore. And bail, so you hear this thing in the papers, or this person has been denied bail, or he has run away whilst on bail, he's absconded, as they say. Bail is simply an amount of money that guarantees or gives the assurance to the authorities that you'll turn up, right? And you can't get this money on your own. So if your cousin, your brother, your little sister, or your neighbor, your boyfriend, your fiance has been required to go to court or to assist with investigations, there is a possibility he may be asked to give bail. And the reason for that is there is a belief or a perception that people who are being accused of doing something wrong may not want to continue to assist. So it's very understandable why they need to have something to try to hold on to you. Say, please, you have to come back, otherwise your mom or your brother or your best friend who has put his name out to say that I'll be your bailer for you, he's going to lose quite a big sum of money. Okay? The police may sometimes allow a person to be his own bailer, and that's a very limited category. Very often, this is only for foreigners because imagine if you're a tourist passing through, you're not going to have anyone you can call, right? So you sign what is called a personal bond, which is I promise, I swear that I will turn up, and if I don't turn up, I promise to pay. So you can see in itself that is a problem, because how is that going to be enforced? Okay, so I'm also trying in today's talk to introduce a few other issues just for you to be aware of. And then you can make your own mind up about what needs to be done to improve that, right? I think going back to the first point that I made, the information that I'm trying to give to empower all of us here, the purpose of that is so that we can spread it to people, to our children, or to our neighbors, to our friends over coffee, in a kopitiam, anywhere. Because I don't think there's enough of a basic level of understanding about our rights, and it's a very risky thing. Because I could be that person on the MRT, as I mentioned, right? And if I didn't know, I can't say, wait, officer, I'm going to Google this first. I'm going to find out what are my rights first. You wait, I just need 2 minutes. You can't have that, right? And you, as I said earlier on, you start this process of, I'm going to have my lawyer, and it just goes downhill from there. Because you don't know your rights, and you give in to anything that they say, which is not entirely a bad thing, but it's an important thing to know your rights, okay? It's something that you must be aware exists, and you must try to protect. So that's this slide. I'm going to move on. These are some of the very common requirements for a bailiff to fulfill before he can be a bailiff. Right? It's self-explanatory. You must be 21. You can't be an undischarged bankrupt. You can't have ongoing criminal cases. These criteria that you see on the screen are quite logical and common sense, because if you yourself are potentially a liability and may not even turn up as the bailer, what assurance then does the investigation agency or the enforcement agency have in trying to get the person that you're tied to come back? Right? So it's not always flawed. There is a lot of good sense in the system as well. Okay? So I say this also because for those who feel that the system or the laws are not quite well balanced, okay, this gives us the assurance that actually it is. Right? A lot of the rules that we abide by are very common sense. Some of them are a lot more technical. The legal team here, the compliance team here, the enforcement teams here have a separate set of legislation and rules that they need to interpret and to put into practice, which is not really your day-to-day stuff. I would say. But whatever I'm trying to cover today, I like to think is important for all of us to know from an early age and throughout our lives. Okay? I'm just going to move on to the next slide. Before I move on, there are some additional conditions that can be imposed. And this commonly happens because if you are a foreigner in Singapore and you've been arrested, maybe, let's just say, wrongly accused, okay, and you need to travel, right? Because if you're, say, from France, you're here for a 2-week conference. During that 2-week conference, and this is a completely fictitious example, during that 2-week conference, you have a drink during one of the evenings with your counterparts, or you've been your R&R, or you've been shown the sights and sounds of Singapore, right? Which STB does very well. But something goes wrong. Either you rent a car, or you're caught drunk driving, or again in a club, a woman accuses you of doing something inappropriate. Very quickly and suddenly, you're asked to investigate, or rather, you asked to assist with the investigations. And you may not even be able to travel and continue your lives. So this is a very real issue, right? It's a very real issue because we can't have all the foreigners who are in Singapore investigated stay here for the entire duration of their case, because it's not very pragmatic. So these exceptions allow the authorities to exercise that discretion, to allow you to travel on the basis that you will come back when required. Okay? Investigations are conducted for a few reasons. The main thing, again, it sounds very simple, but it's to get to the bottom of things. It's trying to obtain evidence and to compare whether the person making the accusation or the person facing the accusation, who is telling the truth or who is more likely to tell the truth, right? Some of us who have children will already know that this is something we do on a daily basis, assessing the evidence, right? Whether your child has already watched TV without asking you, or did the homework that you should watch, he or she promised, right? Or who was the one who started the fight with the brother or sister, right? You will do your fact finding. You ask your helper or your grandmother or your mother-in-law, somebody at home, what happened? You try to trace back and say, no, okay, the TV is still hot. Did somebody just turn it on? Or I can just see the last login was this. I just saw that you saw this YouTube video 3 weeks ago, so don't lie to me. So that's very similar to what investigators do, okay? And the purpose is to find out whether there has been an offense that has been disclosed. So we're moving into a sort of middle section of my talk today, which is getting a bit more, I think, important, not so much technical, but important because it involves a lot more of your rights, okay? I pause it again, sorry, I'm known to be long-winded, but bear with me. I pause it because we've come here today for this talk thinking, okay, this is a criminal lawyer going to tell me about how people who have been accused of some wrongdoing will navigate and find their way out of out of trouble. But that's not really that. It's something equally important for us to bear in mind, that what if a person has been wrongly charged? Okay, what if? It happens often enough. You may not know about it or read about it, you may not see it, you may even put it out of your mind completely. But if you forget anything that I say today, the only thing I want you to remember is that it could happen to any of us. So I'm not trying to sell fear or to make us all stand in the corner on the MRT because when they bump, somebody's going to accuse me of something. But the truth is, it's not that hard to imagine that happening, right? It's not that hard. It's not that hard to forget to pay for something in cold storage, right? It's not that hard. And it's not that hard to imagine the store manager jumping to conclusions because of the way you're dressed, right? Maybe it's a weekend, you're not wearing your work attire. So it really could happen to any of us. It could happen when you run a red light because you're trying to fix your child's car seat. Something happens. You didn't mean it. So that is my ongoing theme, not just for today, but in my daily work. And I try when I speak to people in groups like yourself, or students, or other lawyers, or young students, is to not always go through life being very afraid or cautious of something bad going to happen, but being aware that it could well happen to you, right? And once you start seeing things and the process through a different perspective, it is helpful for yourself and also for the people that are around you, because then you would, on the one hand, be less likely to judge, right? Be less likely to judge and say, oh, this person deserves it, or how could he have done that, right? But on the other hand, you also be better prepare yourself, because in the next day or half a second it takes place, something very dramatic could have taken place in anyone's life, okay? So that's this slide. Who can conduct investigations? I've covered that before. Let's see. Can you be detained? Okay. I mentioned the first point already, that you can be detained. What can the investigator do during investigations? Interview and ask you relevant facts. Where were you? What did you see? What did you hear? If you say this, you have anyone to back you up, right? You mentioned this earlier, but now you're saying this now. Again, very simple things that we already do on a daily basis, sometimes with our staff, or our superiors, or our colleagues, or with customer service agents that we handle, that we deal with on the phone, right? So that's no different. It's only that the consequences are a lot more severe. Okay? It's not exactly trying to dispute a StarHub bill, right? To say I went over the data because my daughter did this, or something else, or it wasn't me who logged on to this and left my Wi-Fi, or I left my data running overseas. It's not quite so simple. Whenever the police or the investigators are involved, sadly the consequences are very severe if things don't go according to your plan, which is that nothing will happen. Okay? The main thing that investigators do during the investigation process is to obtain your testimony, what you have to say. And again, I'll pause here, because the most objective way to do this is through a written statement. Okay, so that's no different to interviewing someone for a job or something else. You get what they say, they write it down. And once you put your signature on that, the thinking is that you have promised that this is true. Okay? But the reality is also sometimes not quite so simple, because it depends on the person asking questions. To put it one way, and I say this all the time, you ask the wrong questions, you get the wrong answer. Okay? And you know this is very common in the life outside of an investigation. But it takes on a different color when the police are involved, because there's no other objective source to verify whether your account of the interview is accurate or the investigator's account. Okay, and the point I'm really trying to make is this: that in Singapore, and you may or may not know this. If you do, then it's very good. If you don't, then I hope that you not spread this around, but just take it on board and let it digest, because it may come in handy for you or a loved one at some point. It is this: the investigation process in Singapore is completely dependent on the interviewer, right? And the only record of that is in this thing called the statement. And that's a 1-page, 2-page, 3-page document that the interviewer will prepare using the laptop or handwritten. So you can see how subjective that is already, right? Bad day of time constraint, the person's language ability, your English could be better than the person interviewing you, right? Or if you get an interpreter, if you only speak Teochew, but the Teochew is actually not that good. And so you can see there's many gaps, many potential areas for misunderstanding. Okay? It may not be malicious. Nobody's trying to put words in your mouth, but just very simple misinterpretation could happen. Right? So I would also like to share that in other countries, they have a video recording that takes place and that captures the entire process from the moment that you're in the room, and also an audio recording. And these two things don't magically make any system better than ours. We have a very efficient system, but just think about it this way: these are things that help to safeguard our rights when things don't go according to plan, right? So that's also something for you to take on board that you won't really find out there in social media. Not many lawyers talk about it, right? That's something that is in need of some change. And the good news is the police are, as of last year and this year, trying to implement the videotaping and the audio recording of interviews, because they know that sometimes misinterpretation can happen. Not so much mistakes, misinterpretation. You may get the wrong impression from the interviewer or vice versa. Okay? So 2 types of statements that you can be asked to give. One is a witness statement, which is very general. So if you are an eyewitness, to a traffic accident, you're going from Sheng Siong, crossing the street, you see somebody knock somebody down, right? Either with an appeal for witnesses, you turn up or you give your details. That's a witness interview, right? Investigation statement. Nothing wrong. You're not being accused of anything wrong. So maybe less stressful, right? I just say what I saw. If I get it wrong also, it doesn't really matter, right? But important because you never know how things may turn out, okay? But let me just focus on this for a while. Key things to note, and this is really what I'm trying to deliver as part of the talk in terms of the education aspect, right? This is the account of your memory and your recollection of what happened, right? You must tell the truth, needless to say. It will be conducted in English, right? But very few people know this. If you do, again, good for you. That you can speak in whatever language or dialect that you feel comfortable in. Tamil, Telugu, you want to speak Ceylonese or anything, or Hakka or Teochew, or Not because you want to be difficult, but truly, if that is your most comfortable dialect, and language that you're familiar with using, that you will not misunderstand or be misinterpreted for, then you should say so. Okay? So that's this. Important to note that after you've given your account and they've had it transcribed and put into writing, you should take your time to read it. Not just for typos and for grammar because you want to correct the English or to make it sound more bombastic or whatever, right? But because once you sign it, it's really locked in. And it's not quite so simple to say take the liquid paper, you can't really do that. Okay? Because instinctively, and you will know this when you deal with your children or your staff, when people change what they say, your first reaction is that, hey, something's not quite right. Was it so difficult to remember? This is something that you couldn't have gotten wrong. And once that happens, suspicion grows, it grows, and sometimes from nothing, from a very innocent mistake, it can take a different turn. Okay, so important to note that you have to read it very carefully before you sign. And I say that, and in the next breath, I'll tell you that whenever I sign my staff contracts or Singtel, I don't read a single thing, I just initiate. But that's also very scary. But that's my way of trying to tell you that I think because we've asked in our lives now more than ever to give our consent, to accept or to agree to a lot of things, PDP on the phone, if I go to Kuhair, I'm going to buy something or Taobao, please accept all the cookies and all that. And you click yes without really reading or knowing what your rights are. That, I'd say, smaller risk than this. Because once you do this, you can't go back and tell the investigator, sorry sir, it was me yesterday when I came 9 o'clock, right? The thing I said, is this wrong or wrong? Because I don't want to correct it now. You can't just do that. There's no customer service agent you can call and say, I want to correct my brief statement. It doesn't happen. And the danger is that because it is 2 pages, but the heaviest document that you will ever have to sign, right? You will only realize how important it is after you read the room. So, I'm not saying you will ever need to know this, but just bear that in mind, just share it around. Okay, I'm sure somebody else will find it useful. And the real point I want to make is this. So I mentioned earlier on that if you forget anything that I said, one point to take note of is that be aware that these issues that are being covered today could happen to you at some point. Okay, not because you've been accused of some serious crime, but very often in our lives, it really could happen. The other point that is equally important is this, that much as you must tell the truth, okay, you must tell the truth and not lie, because it's an offense to lie. You can be charged for that and go to prison for that. But you have every right not to say anything that would expose you to being charged. Now, how does that work? Okay? You have to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, right? But if the investigator tells you or gives you the impression that you have to tell the truth, and if you did it, you must say you did it. You must say you did it. And it's an offense to say you didn't do it, right? That's not exactly the case, okay? Because you have a legal right, and this is you can check this out, this is true. You have a right to remain silent and not say that I did it or didn't do it. Okay? Very few people actually know this. Because they think that because I need to tell the truth, it's only logical that if I did it, I must say that I did it. So in legal terms, they call this the right against self-incrimination. You don't need to say and give it to the investigators on the platform. Right? That's coming again from the perspective that I'm not here and I'm not in the business of trying to help guilty people avoid responsibility. But I'm in the business of trying to empower people with this information, because it makes for a smoother running of our community, I feel. Okay? I'll come back to this in a bit. And if you have any excuse or explanation that you want to give, what you should do is to say it very early. Otherwise, they will say, you never say, or otherwise known as, you could have told me early and the judge is not likely to believe you if you only said it in English. Okay? I'm going to breeze through the next few. I'm aware that the food is being set up, so I think we're getting there. Okay? A caution statement, very similar to an investigation statement, only more serious. Because they only give it to you the moment you're about to be charged. Okay? So, what you need to know is that there are two types of statements. One is, in the course of the investigations, you can be asked to be interviewed many times. You can give many investigation statements. Only one caution statement, because that's the one they give to you before you have to go to court tomorrow and say, you know, Mr. Tan, tomorrow you're going to go to court. Any final words, so to speak? Any final words that you want to say now, you got to say now, or forever hold your peace. So this is what they call the caution statement. Okay? So here we go. I mentioned this earlier. You have the right to remain silent when you're being formally charged. Okay? The same point. If you have an explanation or an excuse or a defense, as they say legally, then you must say so earlier. It's only in your own interest, right? But again, that's not quite the same thing as saying that I must say that I did it, unless your plan is to be very upfront about it. And this is a good policy too, okay? Being very open and saying, look, I know where to run. I've got no excuse. I just want to be given, you know, like a sentence or less serious type of treatment. Okay? What documents can you obtain from the police if you're being interviewed, if you're being investigated? You can actually apply for some documents, a very limited category of documents. They're called the first information report, and now you can do this online, or you can go to a police post and you can pay. And this really gives you an idea of what the accusation is against you, and that helps you, in most cases, plan how you want to deal with the case. Okay? For example, I'll give an example. If I know that I've been wrongly accused of this MRT thing, so we are all familiar with that. If I know that that's very, very obviously wrong, okay, and the 999 call or the report made by the young lady or man or whatever is very different to what other eyewitnesses saw, or simply couldn't have happened. If I had my hands in my pockets the entire time, and the person or the eyewitness says that, oh, I saw him take out his hand, and then he was holding the hand mobile phone, he was taking a picture inappropriately, that couldn't have happened. So I'm very comforted by that, because that shows how mistaken the person was. Okay? So that's how a first information report and access to it can help you. Summing up this slide, what happens on the first day you attend court, and this maybe is something more shareable. Many people feel that if I go to court for anything minor, middle seriousness, or very serious, I need to settle it on the day itself. I better bring all my cash and pay the fine on the spot. If not, my fine will go up. And every time I postpone it, or you go up, then the interest will go up, and then it's certain things like that. Completely not true. Okay, it's again well within your rights to ask for time. All right, not time for the purpose of wasting time, but time because you need to do certain things, such as getting legal advice, or getting money to get the legal advice, or trying to decide in your family what you want to do, right? Or settling your children, or you're expecting your payment to come in, and with that money you can pay a fine. You can always ask for more time if you give a perfectly understandable and acceptable reason. Okay, so that's the point I want to make. Equally important to know also that you don't have to settle it on the day itself. One of the very common questions that I get asked: what else can you do before you plead guilty or you claim trial? Effectively, pleading guilty, and you see this in the next few slides. Pleading guilty means I accept that I've done something wrong. I'm willing to close the case now. Or claiming trial means I'm challenging it. I don't agree. I don't agree that I did this. It wasn't me. You're mistaken. I didn't do it this way. I didn't take the rice out of Sheng Siong without paying on purpose. I really thought I paid for it. Something like that. Okay? This slide is meant to tell you that you have also the right and also the time to try to negotiate, to try to, some people say bargain, some people say chamsiong, some people say negotiate, to try to get a better outcome for yourself. And it's well within your rights. Okay? In the States or in other Western countries, they call this plea bargaining. Doesn't quite sound very fair, right? Because it sounds very, very casual bargaining. But we in Singapore sometimes call it plea negotiation. And it really is you trying to tell the authorities in this document called representations, you see that? It's a letter of, just really a fancy way of saying a letter of explanation. Just a letter of clarification. Just trying to explain and to give your account. And you do it now already when you're asking for waiver of your credit card fees, your annual fees, right? You know, actually I don't qualify, but you know what? Can I give you a good reason? I've spent the X amount. Can you please reconsider? And that's effectively the same thing, right? The police are saying, you know, Mr. Wong, you've been caught for this drink driving, very clear cut. You don't have to bargain too much. You're going to go to court, right? But they may still say no, but it's within your rights to appeal, to say, look, I know you're about to do this, you're very entitled to do this, but I would like to explain, this is why. Rushing my mom to the hospital, she had high blood pressure, she has a history of this, I was very worried, I run the red light, I shouldn't have done it, it's my first time ever in 24 years, can you just please give me this chance? Because I do the school run for my 3 kids, I also carpool and all these other things. You never know. It's well within your rights to explain. Okay? So that's the point I'm trying to make with this slide. Pleading guilty, I'll just read through this, means that you accept what you've done is wrong. You're just trying to ask for a lighter sentence or not to be penalized so severely. Claiming trial is when you don't agree. There's some aspect of the case that you want to challenge. And sometimes, and this is again something that's not very widely known, very often people plead guilty not because they've done something wrong, but because it makes more pragmatic sense, right? Engaging a lawyer or going to court, even if I don't engage a lawyer, means taking leave from work for 5 days. I'm going to contest this charge that's going to end up me paying $7,500, right? My fine really is there. I'm willing, because on a cost-benefit analysis, I feel it's more worthwhile for me to settle this case now and move on. Anyway, nobody's going to go to prison. So again, you can see that's part of the theme, because I think very often when you open the papers, you see people making certain decisions, and it appears to be very clear-cut. But there are many other reasons why. Okay? A plea mitigation is a fancy way of saying a document that you need to produce and present to the court to ask for a lighter sentence, and that's it. To mitigate sentence means to try to reduce the severity or the penalty. Okay? So I'll touch on a few points here. One of the things that you can talk about, or two main categories of information that you can talk about, and you can use this in your letters of appeal to the traffic police or any other, to the town council when you're overdue for your conservancy charges, right? You always give the explanation about two categories of information. One about you as a person, right? And the other about the incident. Okay? So this one must be attention. This one a bit useful. Okay? By talking about you want to talk about your education, your employment profile, your family, what a great person you are generally. Ideally you've been that for a long time. Okay, the longer the better. But by putting it out in writing, it allows the people considering it to see that, hey, you're not just a name and an NIC. There is a bit of a good track record that you have. Over 35 years living in Toa Payoh, this is the first time I missed my conservancy charge. Okay, so that's something, right? It means something, right? Maybe something happened. Maybe I was traveling in China on a holiday, right? I missed it. The second thing is facts relating to the incident, equally important, right? For example, I was traveling, or I changed address. I was staying with my mom-in-law because my wife just gave birth the first month, or very, 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 very difficult. All the confinement was there. So I didn't go and check my post here. That's why I didn't see the notice. You may not get out of trouble for that, but it's equally important for you to explain. Okay, so I'm trying to say that don't think of criminal law or criminal defense work as something that only people who go to court need to use. It's something that you may have to encounter and you might find useful in other areas of your own life. Okay, I'm almost done, so don't worry. Okay, main objectives that the court needs to do in trying to punish people are 4 things. One is to make them remember how painful it was to do something quite so wrong. They call it retribution. So that you feel the pain yourself, and you won't do it, and you will reflect. To deter others. Other people who may think about doing it, or people who think that these things always happen, don't worry lah, they only get a fine. Right? So it's important because for repeat offenders, they specifically need to be reminded even more. Right? Or, for example, certain crimes are seeing a slight surge. For example, these cases about the personal mobility devices on the street, your scooters, your e-scooters, and your e-bikes. So there are times that you see this phrase being mentioned in court cases in the papers, deterrent sentence. It's just to signify a more serious sentence for the purpose of educating others. Okay? And the next is to prevent it from happening, because if people really need to be dealt with, either to receive treatment or to be institutionalized for a short time, so that they will recover from whatever issues they have that are troubling them, that cause them to commit the offences, that can happen. And the last is to rehabilitate. So it's not all just with the rotan, it's not all just with the big stick, right? The purpose of sentencing is also to give you an opportunity to recover, to get better. Because very often, what has happened in the offense taking place is the combination of many other small things. Not to stereotype it, but really family issues, financial issues, education, relationships breaking down. Very often, if they are not very well managed, they can escalate. Okay? So these are the last 2 or 3 slides. Just to sum up, your rights in an investigation, they have the right to ask you for your personal particulars. You also have the right to ask for their particulars. Okay? The second point is that you have the right to amend the statement. Very important, because they will always say, faster, go and sign. I need to go for lunch, or you don't have. The faster you sign, the faster you go home. Take your time. Take a pen, amend it, correct it. In extreme cases, but enough of them do take place, you can ask for the statement to be typed up in a certain way, because you don't understand the words they're trying to use. You either want to use more technical phrases, or you want to use less technical phrases. It depends. Okay? You may is the operative word here, because you may ask for any of these things. You can ask for your family member. You can speak to a lawyer, right? You can ask for visits. You can ask to consult a lawyer of your choice. These are things that you can ask for. The answer is that they will let you have them when they are ready. That's the truth. Okay? And I do agree with that, because very often when you make that call, it can interfere because it either delays the process, or you are given the wrong impression of how to handle the case, and you're being less cooperative. So that, to be fair, can sometimes take place. Okay? But this, I can guarantee you, is much less of an issue, if any at all. Okay? These are your rights, and you should ask for these to be recorded, precisely because misinterpretation, mistakes do happen. Right? Come to the end, and this, I think, is the last slide. When you're being investigated and you have items that cease from you, you will get them back if they belong to you and are not related to the case, right? That's what they call a disposal inquiry, where if, for example, and this is a common enough situation, your car, or you lend it to your brother-in-law, your neighbor, your best friend from school, and they use it to do other things, whether it's contraband cigarettes or to deliver. Now it's not so common, but these are older people like me in the room will know. Illegal VCDs, things like that. These can be confiscated and forfeited eventually. Okay, so that's something to know. 48 hours is is how long the prosecution and or rather the investigators can do in terms of holding you without additional permission. If they do need more, they will need to give good reasons. Okay. That really is the end, but before I take up your questions, I just wanted to focus on the 2 things again, just to drum it into you, right? Number 1, don't be quick to judge people who you see in the papers. There's always a story, and there will be less of a story if more of us were very aware of how to handle ourselves in an investigation environment. The only reason why we don't is that we genuinely believe we will go through life without ever having to speak to a police officer, ever. But you just don't know. It's like insurance. You just hope that it doesn't happen. And when it does, it's very important to have this information in your toolkit so that you know. So that if either you've been under a lot of stress or you don't know how to react, at least you know this is what I can do. Okay? Any questions about my work, or the cases that I do, or things that you've heard about fair, not fair, does this happen in practice? Anybody quick? Oh?
Thanks for sharing. One question. Between getting a fine, right, and actually getting sentenced to prison, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what's the implication to someone's
Okay.
criminal history?
Good question. So the question was, between getting a fine and going to prison, how does that affect your track record going forward? Okay? So the first thing, the most superficial thing is the pain, right? Obviously paying a fine to some or to most is less painful than going to prison. So that's the first thing. So some people prefer going to, or some people prefer paying a fine because they don't need to be in prison, right? But equally, it does happen that people can't pay the fine, or they rather not, because they only make a certain amount of money that takes them an incredibly long amount of time to save up just for that fine. And you know what? 2 weeks in prison is something I can take. So that's the first thing. I don't know whether that's not the answer to your question yet, but that's the mindset, right? The real pain of a court case is the criminal record, and the criminal record is contained in this thing called the Register of Criminals. So imagine this, and I always say this all the time to students and to my team. Imagine the Register of Criminals it's not really this, but it's like a big book. It's like a big logbook with everyone's record being written there. Okay? So once you know that there's this register, then this is the definitive record of everyone's criminal record. Which means that if you are not in that register, you have no criminal record. Okay, so just bear that in mind. Now what if I tell you that certain offences are not registrable offences? So things that won't go in the book, even if you pay an incredibly large amount of money, right? Regulatory offences, things that are prosecuted by stat boards. I can't say for sure whether it's yours. Maybe you can ask Mr. Low and Mr. Chan from their respective departments whether that is the case. But I'll give you an example. LTA offences, a parking ticket didn't extend my parking coupon, right? You may forget to pay that 6 times. Suddenly, you miss your composition for people to drive, you know what I mean. You miss the opportunity to pay the fine through AXS. Now you got to go to court. Now I'm in court. Oh, I'm in a court case. Oh goodness. I can't, and I quit my job. I need to declare certain things. I won't be able to find a new employment. That's not exactly true, because using just that example, regulatory offences that are minor are not registrable. Even though you've been in court, even though you've got a charge sheet, even though you've had to admit to doing something wrong in court and the judge is imposing a fine on you and you have to pay the fine in court, that doesn't end up as a criminal record. And the technical thing to know about criminal records is this. In Singapore, the purpose of having this register and non-register is this, that if you do have a criminal record, you must say that you do, right? But if you don't, you can very well, and you're legally entitled to, not say that you have a record. You have no record. Okay? So that allows people to move on with their lives and not have to always declare that, in 1992, I run a red light, I didn't pay the fine, or certain things. It's not just for minor offences. I believe even some M1 offences or things to do with your levy, these are also that you can pay fines up to the thousands, maybe tens of thousands. They may also not be registrable offences. Some IRAS offences, right, failing to pay CPF to your workers, which can be very serious, are also not registrable. Okay, I don't know whether that answers your question, but that's how there is a difference between certain types of penalties and offences. But to round off the answer to that, very often things that carry imprisonment tend to be registrable. But when I tell you that people often enough choose not to pay a fine just to go to prison, then you know that actually people can go to prison for very minor things too. Minor things. Okay? Any other questions? Any questions? So next slide. So whether or not you have been facing similar questions before, that's my name, my mobile, and my email at work. Now, Law Guide is something that I do in my spare time. But it's also my full-time work or job or my commitment as well. So I do my lawyering full-time. But I also do this thing called Law Guide Singapore, and you may have seen it around. What it really is a free portal for legal information, right? That exists really on mostly on the website and also on this thing called social media, which all of us have. Okay, and the purpose for me starting that was precisely this: to share this information, because it is so much easier for us to click share and educate someone that we're close to and that we care about. Then I think maybe not now, maybe not overnight, but maybe in a couple of years we will have a lot more in terms of a baseline understanding of legal issues. Right? And in your own time, you don't have to do it right now. Maybe over lunch or after lunch you can do this. If you take out your phone and on Messenger, and whoever has your phone, you can do that right now. And if you have Facebook Messenger, all you need to do is type in Law Guide, and what should happen is you'll see the page pop up. And if you do it now, we'll just see what it is. How many of you are doing this now? Yes, I know. Okay, very good. Okay. So you should see a little briefcase that says Law Guide. You see that? And they ask you to start a chatbot. So basically that contains all of this, everything you see today. I don't know, I should just pick the chatbot and to see it for 1 hour. But that really is my way of being able to share with you and a lot of other people outside of this room, whatever you've heard. People who can't be here, who can't have the 1 hour here, who won't be able to have lunch with us today. And if you navigate that, you see it covers criminal law and family law, and in time to come other areas of law as well. Okay? So it's been my pleasure to speak to you today. I hope to be able to come and see you and have a chat with you again soon. Thanks very much for inviting me to Don.
Thanks, Jonathan, for taking your time to speak with us. I hope everyone enjoyed this. And shall we all adjourn for lunch?
Thanks, guys. I'll be around here in case you want to ask me questions.